and welcome to the Casual Cinecast powered by Cinelinx. My name is Chris.
My name is Justin.
And my name is Mike. Today we'll be going over what's on our minds, and then we'll be moving into a feature review for Lynne Ramsay's You Were Never Really Here.
It's really the autobiography of Mike for the podcast because he's never really here.
Yeah.
That was your best joke yet, Chris.
Yeah, that was actually good. I liked it. I didn't know where you were going with that, but now I do.
And knowing's half the battle.
That's true. And if you want to know more about what we're doing, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Casual Cinecast. You can join our Facebook group and talk film with us at facebook.com/groups/Casual Cinecast. Or if you want to email us directly, you can email us at casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
All right, so let's move into what's on our mind. So, Mike, what have you been watching?
So this week, I've actually been watching all the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies again. I won't go over those too much in detail because we did just release a MCU episode like a couple days ago. So feel free to go check that out. We talk about Infinity War and everything leading up to it. But other than that, really the only thing I've watched this week would be the season 2 premiere of Westworld. Have you guys watched that?
No, I haven't watched it yet. I've got it ready to go, but I have not had time to watch it.
Yeah. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I watched it last night. I watched the last episode of the first season again and then led it into the new episode of the second season. I'm excited to hear what you thought.
All right, let's just go into it then. So, my girlfriend and I watched all of season 1 before the premiere. And I'm glad I did because the first time you watch season 1, you're kind of getting your bearings. You're trying to make sense of where you're at, what's going on. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of nuance in that show. So I'm glad I watched it again. I think if you are hazy on what happened in season 1, because that was like 2 years ago, definitely watch it again. It is worth it.
Yeah, a second viewing is really good because there are some things that you think are one way, and upon a second viewing, you see that it's not that way from the beginning. It's really interesting to watch.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you. Season 2, I would say, starts with a bang. It hits the ground running and delivers up on the promise of the premise of the show. Like season 1, I feel like is a prequel to what the show that they needed the budget to make was. And I feel like now that they have that budget and they're a hit, if they play their cards right, it could be something special. I feel like all the money was spent in the right places. You could see the money on the screen. It doesn't seem quite as convoluted and twisty as season 1. It seems a lot more straightforward, at least so far based on the premiere. But that could easily change. You know, next week there could be a whole bunch of things that we don't understand. But it seems like, at least based on episode 1, that this season's going to be a lot more straightforward.
Yeah, I'm not quite as high on it as you are. I do have faith that it will grow as the season progresses. And I do kind of mess with the timeline a little bit.
Sure, there's 2 timelines, but they seem pretty simple to parse.
Yeah, it should be interesting to see what happens. I'm definitely excited to see the rest of it. And I really enjoyed the first season, so I can't wait to see what happens. But I was just a little bit underwhelmed by it. Like maybe it was my anticipation was too high for it. So
here's what I would say. I watched season 1 from the premiere onward. And I was really underwhelmed by season 1 because it seemed like it valued its twists and turns and convoluted plot over substance. And I feel like season 2 doesn't try to keep me guessing for something that it can't deliver. Like, I feel like season 1, I was waiting for a twist that was more interesting and worthwhile than what we ended up getting. Whereas in season 2, I feel like it's not even trying to lead you to a greater twist because it's not as obvious. I mean, maybe it is. There could be a twist coming, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not actively waiting for it right now like I was at the beginning of season 1 when I got on Reddit and I was like, oh, okay. You know, I guess I'll have to wait 9 or 10 weeks to figure out if this is correct. Whereas right now, I don't have any guesses. You know, I'm just waiting for next week. And I find that to be enjoyable and refreshing in this particular show.
I have one question as someone who hasn't seen it. Did they shorten the theme song / intro? Or is it still like a minute and a half or however long it was?
That's an interesting question.
I don't think they've shortened it, but I think they changed a lot of like the initial imagery in it. So it's the same length song, but you'll get different things to look at during season 2 than you did season 1.
Okay. Because even from like the first episode, I found the intro to be way too long.
Oh, I love
like
the intro.
The toughest part of the whole show to get through. So I was hoping they would cut it down, but HBO doesn't really do that.
Yeah, I like the intro, but it feels like they were trying. They even hired the same guy that did the Game of Thrones intro, which I would argue is a fantastic intro and much better than the Westworld intro. And I think they were trying to just capture that guy's fame.
Isn't Game of Thrones intro like showing you the world and
it's
orienting you?
Scanning over the map and all the places you're going to potentially visit.
It seemed like Westworld was just a lot of like images that people thought were really cool.
Images of like AI and stuff. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So it was always boring to me. And I can tangent a little bit, but I've been watching The Sopranos again, and that intro is also a minute and a half, but there's a lot going on. Like there's a lot of like him being in the city and going from the city out to the suburbs, and like the image, the way that like the image and the surroundings that you're looking at as the car as he's driving, the way that like deteriorates and changes as he's going through, it keeps it very interesting. And so I don't know. I think the Westworld thing is lacking. So I was hoping they'd change it, but
there might be a difference too, binging it as opposed to watching it week to week.
Right.
So I watched it week to week, but if you watch 3 episodes, I could see getting tired of it. But I really enjoy the music of the Westworld intro.
Yeah, just for an alternative point of view. My girlfriend loves it, and she actually comments on it every time it comes on. So
it gets me excited for it, and I get pumped when I hear it. But it's just.
I would say it's not as good as Game of Thrones intro, but also, who cares about comparing intros to TV shows? So
let's rank all the.
Who cares?
shows.
But I will say, Lost has the best one.
Short and sweet.
Wow.
Anyways,
sorry to tangent us on that.
Yeah. So what have you been up to, Justin?
I actually haven't been watching a lot since our bonus episode on the MCU. That's actually what I've been watching the most lately, is trying to play catch up on Marvel movies, of which I watched Age of Ultron and Captain America Civil War, because those were the 2 I was told that I needed to catch up on the most. And I think we talked pretty extensively about those in the bonus episode. So if you want to hear my opinion on that, or us discuss those films in general, I would say go back to the episode previously, like Mike said. But just as a brief one, I thought Age of Ultron was decent enough and like pretty watchable and not too boring. And Civil War, I was kind of struggled to get through. I thought it was a bit of a harder watch. Both of them, I would say, fell in the like 5 out of 10 range, roughly.
And for the record, I think it's crazy that he thinks Age of Ultron is better than Civil War.
It'll be the eternal debate. That's the real Infinity War.
Yeah. Listen to that episode.
Yeah, we don't need to get into it again. And then literally that's all I've been watching, other than more Joel McHale show with Joel McHale. So
are you enjoying that?
Yeah, it's good. It's
Joel
just
McHale is charming.
Super. Yeah, it's just super simple and funny. They actually have like these segments they do where they bring on like other people, usually from Netflix original shows, to kind of come in and do a little like bit, and that's pretty hit or miss, mostly misses. But when they don't have those, like it's just perfectly good. Like I'm eating dinner and I don't want to have to focus on something. I just want something that's like fun. It's great. So that's it for me. So
cool.
Chris.
Yeah, so there's an Alamo Drafthouse about an hour away from my house, and they were playing the 36 chambers of the Shaolin, and I made the trip and I went and saw it. It was my first time to see it. I really enjoyed it. It's a really fun movie to watch. It's probably one of the better kung fu movies I've seen. If you're curious about what it's about, imagine the Rocky montage stretched out over a whole movie. Because that's basically what it is, and it's awesome. It's basically about this guy that is being oppressed, And so he goes to a Shaolin monk temple, and they train him in the 35 chambers of the Shaolin, and then he goes and uses it to, well, spoiler alert, to free his people. So I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I saw it forever ago. I don't remember too much about it, but it was back in the days when I was watching a lot of Kill Bill and other Tarantino movies that influenced Tarantino, and 36 Chamber of Shaolin was one of them.
Yeah, actually, I think the main character, Mike will know better, but the main character is in Kill Bill, right?
Right. So in Kill Bill, he's called Pai Mei. I actually have a box set that I bought a long time ago at Sam Goody, back when that was still in business. And there was a box set of Pai Mei type movies, and one of them was Fists of the White Lotus. And anyway, it was pretty fascinating. But yeah. So the main actor from 36th Chamber of Shaolin was actually, he played two parts in Kill Bill, one in Kill Bill Volume 1 and one in Kill Bill Volume 2. What was his name?
Gordon Liu.
Gordon Liu. Thank you. Anyway, 36th Chamber of Shaolin. It's a classic. If you like 70s Kung Fu,
or even
definitely
if you don't,
give it a shot. Yeah, even if you don't. If you like Tarantino movies, give it a shot. You'll see kind of where he's coming from in a lot of places.
I actually think this is probably one of those movies, you have genre films, but this is one of those movies that kind of rises above the genre, or is the exemplary film of the genre, one of the cream of the crop. So
exactly. Like, it's hidden in plain sight, but it rises above what you assume it is. A lot of spaghetti westerns do that.
Yeah.
And I think those are the ones that Tarantino takes a lot of inspiration from. Like, if you're a fan of Tarantino, it's fascinating to go through his influences and kind of watch what he was influenced by and try to figure out why, and see kind of how he reuses and remixes some greatest hits from filmmakers that he loves.
My best analogy for Quentin Tarantino is that he's a really, really great cover band. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Or more like a medley.
Yeah. Anyways, that's what I watched. I had a really good time watching that. There was this one other piece of news. We've kind of been talking about Netflix a lot. And Netflix is looking to buy some movie theaters so that they can get into the Oscars easier. And it's also kind of sneaky. I think it's kind of has to do with all the controversy around the film festival in France.
Cannes?
Yeah, that one. So it has kind of do, but the interesting thing is that Netflix is only going to buy, or according to the article on IndieWire, they're only looking to buy theaters in New York and LA, basically so they can get their movies into the Oscars easier. I love the idea of Netflix putting their movies in theaters, but I still think that they're just doing the bare minimum in this situation in order to get into the Oscars and get more press. The other thing I think that's interesting about it, that might be a good thing that comes from it, is so if they are putting it in a theater, there might be more time to talk about the movies. They don't just get dumped unceremoniously into your queue or into the abyss that is Netflix.
So I think I'm right there with you. I appreciate that Netflix is trying to play the game right. However, I wish they would just do what Amazon does and just release these movies in theaters before you release them on your streaming platform. Then you're in the conversation, people talk about your movie, people remember your movie, and it isn't just dumped on Netflix right away to be forgotten about immediately.
Yeah, actually the movie we're about to review is an Amazon movie. So
exactly. Last year, Lost City of Z was an Amazon movie. I was able to go see that in theaters. There wasn't much conversation about the movie, but there was some, So I was able to listen to some people talk about it. I was able to read some reviews. I was able to take note of it. Whereas if it had just been dumped on Amazon Prime, I don't even have Amazon. I wouldn't even have known about it. Mm-hmm. There are so many series on Netflix that get dumped that I just stumble upon and I've never heard of because they're not in any kind of conversation. So Netflix buying theaters is a good idea, but doing it to game the system kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, it's not giving us what we want.
Right. It's giving them what they want because they want to have movies that drop on Netflix right away. But theater owners and movie fans who actually enjoy going to the theater don't want that. I mean, granted, we're a dying breed. Movie fans who like to go to the theater are fewer and far between, as evidenced by the box office numbers from this year. But I don't know. I just feel like their whole attitude is wrong on this. I agree that maybe theaters shouldn't be as romanticized as they are, but it also allows a conversation to take place around the movie before it goes into oblivion.
Are we confirmed on the fact that like Netflix is doing this purely to game the system? Because the article that I've read, which is the IndieWire one, it says that like people who are involved with Netflix have said that they're doing it more to give people the option of going to the theater, right? Like, and obviously I don't think they're going to come out and say like, yeah, we're just trying to like get into the Oscars by buying these theaters, right? Are we all just assuming that because we don't like Netflix in general, or like the way that they treat some movies, like you're saying, they just drop them without giving them like a chance to shine or even be seen sometimes? Are we just kind of projecting like what Netflix is trying to do?
Yeah, I'm assuming and looking at things to see. Yeah, you're right, Justin. I am making assumptions here. I think a couple of the reasons I've come to this conclusion is because they are only buying them in LA and New York, and that's where they have to play in order to be eligible for Oscars. And none of this is actually for sure happening. This is just like a report that might happen. And it seems to me that like it's a little bit of both, maybe. We will see. Like if they start spreading it out, like so say they open up in LA and New York and then they do Chicago or Houston, then I'll back off on my thing a little bit. But I think that they are doing this to kind of garner the support of the Oscars.
Yeah, I kind of agree because I feel like this has been the argument since Netflix has started making original content. And a lot of the argument at the time was, hey, why don't you release things in theaters? And Netflix's argument was, stop romanticizing movie theaters so much. And so I don't think they've changed their tune so much as they're tired of being called out for not playing the game the right way. And so now they're like, fine, we'll give you the bare minimum. Stop treating us badly. But as far as I understand, the actual people in charge of Netflix have been on record saying, stop romanticizing movie theaters so much. It's not that big a deal.
I do think the recent tiff with the Cannes Film Festival has also opened their eyes because they did pull all their movies from the Cannes Film Festival. So I do think that they might be trying to play the game a little bit more.
I think they are now because they've realized that they're not looking too good in the public eye. But I think if that were the other way, they would be doubling down on their whole, well, the Cannes Film Festival needs to change around us stance. So, who knows? We'll have to see how it unfolds. But right now, I would say I'm more sympathetic to the Cannes Film Festival point of view. But I totally understand Netflix wanting to, throw their hat in the ring.
Yeah, I just see a lot of potential for good things. Like even if they're thinking we're going to do this to game the system, I think things could happen that would ultimately be a good thing. I think kind of the bottom line is that no matter what, this is Netflix putting their films into theaters where people can go see them. A lot of the smaller indie films and like the Oscar contenders that are smaller will open in LA and New York only at first, and they get that like buzz and you get reviews going and word of mouth starts to spread around, and then it opens up bigger. Like I think if Netflix has theaters only in LA, only in New York, and they put them out there, there's room for that same thing to happen where it's going to get a lot of buzz, a lot of more people are going to demand it, and maybe then they start to put it in other theaters. Like I feel like doing this could lead to more Netflix theater opportunities.
Yeah, I think you're right. Regardless of intent, which we are assuming anyways, but I think that this is a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's something to keep our eyes on. So, yeah, I guess it's time to move into our feature film review.
All right, so let's move into Lynne Ramsay's You Were Never Really Here.
I'm going to ask you some questions. How many are there?
One guy inside the front door, second guy on the top floor.
I've heard of these places. They said you were brutal.
I can be.
I want you to hurt them.
All right, and real quick, before we get into the discussion for You Were Never Really Here, we wanted to let you guys know that we will be doing a non-spoiler section, and when it's time to move into spoilers, we will give you adequate warning, so you'll have plenty of time to tune in or whatever.
Okay, so Lynne Ramsay's You Were Never Really Here stars Joaquin Pheonix, and I think as we previously mentioned, it's an Amazon movie. And do you guys know did Amazon produce it or buy it?
I'm not
and
sure.
Then release?
I do know it played it in the Cannes Film Festival about a year ago.
All right, so the Google synopsis that I found, which I liked a little bit better than the IMDb one this time, was a contract killer uncovers a conspiracy while trying to save a kidnapped teen from a life of prostitution. So who wants to go first? Do you guys want to talk about expectations for the movie?
I will.
Okay, Mike, go ahead.
Okay, so I've actually been hearing about the buzz for this movie for a while now. I'd seen a lot of talk about Lynne Ramsay's new movie. It had been a while since I had actually seen We Need to Talk About Kevin, which I found really disturbing at the time. That and the poster were about all I really knew about this movie before I actually sat down to watch it. But mostly it was based on the reputation of Lynne Ramsay. What about you guys?
Yeah, the same. I've actually never seen any of other movies, but I heard about We Need to Talk About Kevin and heard that it was good. I've never actually watched it, but I also heard some good buzz about it coming out of Sundance and from Cannes and stuff. So yeah, I was excited, and in the same boat as you. I knew nothing about it. I had no idea what type of movie it was going to be. I assumed it would be kind of a drama, but I don't know that it was quite as much of a drama as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, my expectations are right there with you guys. I had heard about it, and I'd read the synopsis we just read, so I knew that much. But going in, I hadn't watched a trailer, and yeah, those were my expectations. Oh, I'd actually watched Morven Caller by Lynne Ramsay a long time ago, and I need to watch We Need to Talk About Kevin because I hear good things about that.
Yeah, that movie is nuts. It certainly has stayed with me since I've seen it.
Yeah. Is it as nuts or more nuts than You Were Never Really Here? And did you think You Were Never Really Here was nuts? What did you think of the movie?
So I would say We Need to Talk About Kevin is probably the more disturbing of the two, for sure. Just based on sheer subject matter. It's hard to make a movie about that particular thing without it being pretty upsetting. As far as We Were Never Really Here goes, I would say I didn't find it upsetting at all. I would say this is a movie that is mostly about mood. The subject matter, I think, is probably elevated by the way the movie is shot and how it goes about being about its subject matter. I also feel that Joaquin Phoenix's performance and the physicality he actually brings to the performance elevates it as well. I'm not sure I love it, but I really enjoyed it, and I do appreciate it quite a bit. So I guess we'll kind of see throughout the course of this conversation how I end up feeling. What about you guys?
It's not a movie that you walk out of and you're like, man, I love that movie. But the things I did really like about it, the Johnny Greenwood score, it was really, really good. I like the way the score and the images and then even the sounds all kind of mixed together to put you in the headspace of Joaquin Phoenix's character, to make you understand how he's feeling on the inside, I like the way she reveals a story to you. It's parceled out very slowly, and you really have to be paying attention to understand that there even is a conspiracy going on, because it's very small elements, and she doesn't broadcast that this thing is happening, and you kind of have to piece it together on your own. But yeah, I think that it's a movie that'll stay with me, that I'll think about more, that I wouldn't mind watching again to see, how I feel about it the second time. And I think Joaquin Phoenix, you're right, his physicality is really good. He's in top mumble form, like Joaquin Phoenix mumbling. But I don't mind that, and I think he's really, really good in this.
He's very compelling to watch.
Yeah, and I wonder if how much is him being really good and how much I'm putting on him, because a lot of the stuff that's revealed is revealed through like flashbacks and stuff like that. So yeah, it's an interesting film, and I really can't wait to dive in deep with you guys. So what do you think, Justin?
I feel like I'm pretty close to what you think about it, and I think what we have all said was that I didn't love the film, but I enjoyed it for sure. Like, enjoyed watching it. I thought it was really well made, like, and shot in an interesting way. I think the thing that I enjoy the most about the movie is the filmmaking. It's the things like you said, Chris, like the score was really interesting. The way certain scenes were shot, and which I won't get into specifics yet, but there's really interesting choices in terms of shooting, particularly like the action scenes, quote unquote action scenes, because there's not too many like what I would call like a standard action scene in it. But I think it's a really beautifully made movie, like in all aspects. And I think the performances are good. Joaquin Phoenix is good. His mom is really good. Like, she doesn't do a whole lot, but from the time she was there, I really felt for her, cared for her. And maybe that's coming as like kind of like surrogately through Joaquin Phoenix's performance, the amount that he cares about her. I think this movie exists in sort of the middle ground between an art house film and an entertainment film. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, it's as if an art house director directed the movie Taken, sort of.
Yeah, I was about to say,
directed
it's like
an action movie.
Yeah, exactly. It's like the most pulpy subject matter ever was directed by someone who had something to say.
I'm looking forward to talking about it because I didn't leave the movie with any sort of thought or message. Like, there wasn't anything for me to think about, or at least I haven't found yet. Like, nothing to reflect on and consider. I just found myself basically entertained. Like, the story was very good. It was wonderful to look at, in my opinion, but not much more going on than that for me. Like, it was like I said, it was a entertaining movie, entertaining story, plot, but just done in a more art house, less traditional, more indie fashion, which is good. None of those things are that bad. Like, I don't always have to take away something.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, cool. So do you mean, when you said there wasn't anything to think about, do you mean the message of the film, or do you mean, explain a little bit further for me.
So it could be like a number of things that you could take away from a film, right? Like, you could take away something that makes you think differently about your own life, right? Or maybe like a philosophical idea that you can think on, right? Like, we've been talking about the Marvel movies a lot lately, but we talked about the one where they're dealing with like the government and whether superheroes should be able to just reign free or be controlled by government. Like, there's like philosophical things that like you can think about later. And I'm not sure that I got anything like that. Like, nothing to think about other than like the things that I enjoyed and the things that were cool. But like, it's all very, very like straightforward. Nothing that I picked up on like metaphorical or philosophical, or nothing that I can take from it and apply to my own life or the way that I live or think,
Sure.
Does that make sense?
No, totally. It 100% does to me. I agree with you in the sense that I don't take away any kind of lesson or much more to keep me up at night thinking about what this movie meant. I don't have any of that. But what I do have is what feels like a more genuine and honest portrayal of the same kind of story I've seen someone like Liam Neeson star in a million times. I feel like this is the anti-Taken, and I think that's enough. I don't know that I need to take away anything from it other than this is the same kind of story and subject matter, but told in a more artful way, in a way where someone has a point of view. You have this woman who has the point of view of someone who could never make something like Taken.
And by the woman, you mean the director, correct?
Right, Lynne Ramsay. I mean, yeah, by the woman, I mean Lynne Ramsay. I don't think Lynne Ramsay could ever make a movie as hacky and bland and boring as Taken, right? So she takes that subject matter and she elevates it to something more. And I don't think it's like I said, like you were saying, I don't think there's anything you're going to be thinking about when it's over. And that stops me from loving it as well. But I do think that a simple story told artfully is enough.
Yeah, absolutely. It has value still. Like, I don't think there's a knock against it for not providing us with that. Not everything has to provide us with that. And what I think we do have is what you said, that it's a story that's been told, probably 100 times throughout, maybe even more throughout like film history, right? It's the love that the movie is made with that really like shines through and makes it watchable. And I think maybe that goes back to what I was saying about the mother seemed really good to me, or I cared a lot about the mother that doesn't have a lot of screen time. The kid doesn't necessarily have a lot of screen time, right? The little girl that he's going to say, but like I care about her, right? Through the minimal time. And I think it's the director treating it the way that it should be, right? Like taking the characters very seriously and not just making them like stock badass characters,
Right. And always withholding that specific satisfaction that you're accustomed to expecting. And I think that has a lot to do with the way Lynne Ramsay films violence and the way she films the revenge aspect of this movie. That's what I mean when I say it's like the anti-Taken. Like, she doesn't give you that dopamine hit of seeing Joaquin Phoenix's hammer connect with a guy's skull that you want.
Yeah, so I want to talk about that, like what you're talking about, but I think we should move into spoilers so we can like talk specifically about it. So you guys ready to move into spoilers?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Yes, I am.
All right, so let me elaborate a little bit more on what I was talking about earlier. What I meant was when Lynne Ramsay doesn't give you the satisfaction of seeing the violence that you come to expect. I guess what I mean is most of the violence is cut around in this movie. Whenever Joaquin Phoenix's character comes into a place to free girls that are in underage prostitution rings, you never actually see him physically assault anybody. It's always right before or right after it's done. And so as a result, it's like the anti-Taken. You never get to see him karate chop someone and then they just fall down, which is what sucks about, Taken, or dare I say the Bourne movies.
He does kind of karate chop that one guy, the drug dealer. Not really karate chops.
He just punches him.
Yeah, but he's just like, yeah.
But it felt good. It felt real because he punches his drug dealer because the drug dealer makes him wait outside his home before he gets home. And Joaquin Phoenix he buys the drugs and then punches the guy, and he's like, "Don't make me wait."
Yeah, the people he hits. So he hits the two main ones that I like that he kind of physically assaults that I remember is there's the one guy at the very beginning that just happens to be outside of the place that he is, the hotel, at the very beginning, and he like runs into him and he punches him because they bump into each other as he's trying to get away from the cops. And then the drug dealer. So the two people that get hurt by Joaquin Phoenix that we see it actually happen don't really deserve it.
Yeah, and so sometimes, like you said, Mike, we cut away or cut just back from like right after the violence has happened. But there are a few moments, particularly when he goes in to get the girl the first time, where Joaquin Phoenix is beating someone, but they're on the other side of like a door frame, and we just see him swinging and hitting. So like, I think it's like a really intentional, like her kind of rubbing in your face almost, like at that moment of like, you're not going to get to see this part. And what I like so much about that choice and what she does with this movie is coming from a problem that I have with other films like the Bourne films and Taken and other action movies, where like when the main character is beating up people and fighting like the whole movie and like killing people in brutal ways, how do you like top that when you get to like the big kill that he needs to do, or like a character that's supposed to be very impactful? Like it's either more of the same, or they have to like do it in a more ridiculous way, or that's like more cool, I guess, for lack of a better word. And with this, like the people we do like really see him kill are like very, very important. And one of them is the cop that comes in and like has him at gunpoint and takes the girl away the first time, right? Or after he rescues her the first time, it's the cops that come in. And that moment you're like, oh my gosh, like the cops are involved in this. Like this is a lot bigger than that. And it's a big decision from him to actually like kill a cop, because if this is a conspiracy, the cop, he's going to be a cop killer, right?
Right. So, exactly. Like he is sealing his fate right there.
Yeah. So that's a huge moment. And by not showing us those other action sequences, or him killing other people, like that's the first person that we see him kill. So like that just makes it, I think, like a lot more important, a lot more impactful, without having to like up the way that he kills them and make it even more ridiculous than the last, or more brutal than the last. You know what I mean?
No, absolutely. And I would say, and this is kind of skipping to the end, but even traditionally in the movie where you would think, okay, this is the climactic third act, and we are about to see him take down a bunch of dudes before he gets to the main villain, she brushes over all of that. You know, he shows up to the mansion or whatever at the end of the movie and just finds her eating, and she's already taken care of the issue.
Yeah, and he finds the guy that he's going there like to kill, like the main one that he needs to like kill, or at least like maim in order to get her out. Like when he finds that person, they're already dead, like with their throat slit.
Yeah, Lynne Ramsay wasn't going to have Joaquin Pheonix be the one to save this girl from her rapist. She has no interest in the traditional, male point of view. This girl saved herself, and Joaquin Phoenix just picks her up, basically.
Yeah, so do you know what I thought of, like, weirdly enough, in that scene? Do you remember in the commentary for Boogie Nights, when Paul Thomas Anderson is talking about the scene where William H. Macy goes out and gets the gun and comes back in and shoots his wife?
Yeah.
And he says that, like, when he watched it for the first time in a theater with an audience, they cheered at that moment when he shot her.
Yeah.
And
he thought he failed.
Yeah, he thought he failed because that's not, like, the right emotion, right? Like, that's not what he wanted. Is like, that shouldn't necessarily be, like, a celebratory moment. And I think had we seen the girl kill that guy, or Joaquin Phoenix come in and kill that guy, we would get that moment, right? Like that moment where you want to cheer. You're like, yeah, he got him, right?
Right.
Like, I think avoiding that is very smart.
I do too, because it never lets you set into that whole Taken mode. It never lets you get comfortable in thinking you're going to know what you're going to see next.
Yeah, and I think keeping it off screen does two things. One, he's got a hammer, so it's going to be really brutal. What I can imagine in my head is going to be much worse than what they're actually going to show. And keeping that satisfaction, you're right, away from you is something, because it is abnormal. It's taken and flipping it on its head, right? And changing it up a little bit so you don't get that satisfaction.
Yeah, it keeps like the tone in the right place. It keeps the movie focused on what it cares about, which is the characters, which isn't like this moment of glory or happiness because the bad guy's dead. Like it would diminish from like the fucked up situation that's happening in the movie, right?
Right, exactly.
Or potentially. Not everyone's going to have that reaction, but you can avoid that reaction entirely by treating it the way she does.
Yeah, what did you guys think about the flashbacks and the way she parcels out the information about his childhood and him like being part of the FBI and in the army?
The way it all unfolds, her flashbacks and her use of like really tight close-ups on flashbacks and her lack of explanation and context of what's going on, it actually reminded me a whole lot of Joaquin Phoenix's P.T. Anderson movie, The Master. In The Master, Joaquin Phoenix's character was in the army in World War II, and he has PTSD. And the whole movie is about his character struggling to deal with PTSD in a world that doesn't understand PTSD. And I think this movie handles flashbacks in a similar way. It never gives you a full-on flashback. It's only close-ups. It's only moments of memory for this person. You get flashes of what he is disturbed by, but you never get the full memory. And Lynne Ramsay doesn't even seem interested in giving you the full memory because it's not important. You get the idea that he had some kind of military background, and you get the idea that he used to work for some people that, tried to save children but weren't able to, and he's haunted by it.
Yeah, some sort of human trafficking case.
Right. And the whole point is it's not important. You know, I actually was listening to a podcast with Lynne Ramsay, and she was saying that before this movie actually started, you know, she cut 20 pages from the script.
That's explaining all the backstory.
Yeah, just various things. Like there was apparently Joaquin Pheonix met with a prop guy, and apparently he was supposed to have a lot more devices and gadgets to help him do his breaking and entering and freeing children job. Mm-hmm. And apparently Joaquin Pheonix and her just weren't having it. They were like, this is bullshit. This is not important. This is all movie bullshit. And so they kind of cut it down to the bare bones of what they felt mattered. And it was a really collaborative process between the two of them. There is, the director's cut, a DGA podcast where she talks about it, and then the Filmstruck podcast. So Filmstruck actually has a podcast now, and they have an interview with Lynne Ramsay on one of their most recent episodes. So both of those podcasts are both really interesting if you're interested to hear more about Lynne Ramsay's point of view on making You Were Never Really Here.
Cool. And before we move too far past like the flashbacks, I do want to say that this is like one part of the film that at times kind of irked me in terms of the filmmaking. Like it's the one thing that I didn't just absolutely love in terms of the way that it was shot and edited and paced. And I think it comes from like having been to several film festivals and watched like a lot of short films and more like amateur films, and having gone to film school and seen a lot of student films, but they're like the snippets of flashbacks, like where they are very fast cuts, feels like a trope that's like overdone to me at this point. Like I'm a little tired of it. So I think it might just be like a personal thing. And I do like where we got longer segments, but not the entire flashback. Like I liked having those little pieces, but I remember there were just a few times when like it would be like a really quick cut that was kind of like jarring or loud, you know? I don't know. I just feel like I've seen that like way too many times. Like that's something that didn't feel like unique in a movie that otherwise feels unique for me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the flashback of the Japanese tourists, and I think that worked really well for me. So the girls ask him to take a picture of them, and so as he does it, he looks at their mouths, and their mouths are like partially open. Yeah, and that's what pulls him into remembering the dead children or the women, I think, that were being human trafficked, and how all their mouths are just partially open. And I thought that worked really well. I can see where maybe it's a little frustrating because it's not also giving the whole story, but I like the way you could kind of piece it together.
Yeah, that's not what I'm saying at all. Like I definitely like getting enough snippets where we have to piece it together and not showing me an entire flashback. Like there were moments where we'd see like 2 seconds of a clip, maybe less, like a second, and that was fine. Mm-hmm. But like there were a few these cuts where it's like it is almost a flash of the flashback, like it's there and gone in an instant, and it's loud, and it's kind of supposed to be jarring. Fragmenting it and only giving us this fragments, not the entire story, I thought was great. There's just those like some of the editing on the flashbacks to me felt a little like typical of like that super quick flashback editing that I'm tired of seeing, or at least doesn't feel inspired to me.
I think I'll push back a little bit on that and say that while I feel that the flashbacks are missing something, I don't know that it felt too typical, in my opinion. Like, I didn't feel like the flashbacks were so of a certain type that I was bored of them. I felt like they were trying to be sparse, but maybe a little too sparse. So while I have a similar unsatisfactory reaction of the flashbacks, I think it's from an opposite point of view.
So you wanted more from the flashbacks a little bit?
Right. I felt like I was thinking the whole time of like the master, and I was like, oh, she's trying to give us too little, and she needs to give us a little more. I felt like the little that she was giving us felt too intentionally little because of budgetary or time restraints versus artistic choice.
I think I can understand that in regards to like the flashback that's like kind of his home life and him in the closet with like the plastic bag over his face and stuff like that. I think the one with like photo taking of with like the Asian women, and then the flashback to like, I guess it was his time in service where he found like the room and full of like dead women. Those I got enough of, but is that what you're saying? Are those some of the flashbacks that also felt too short for you?
Maybe. Yeah, I think so. Like a lot of the flashbacks are close-ups of his face and nothing else while he's looking at something horrifying. And I felt like those kinds of flashbacks, it feels like an easy way to save time and money to film flashbacks that way, of being like, oh, he experienced some stuff, so let's film a close-up of his face and not show you any of the actual stuff he experienced that messed him up. And maybe we don't need that because we've seen PTSD stories before and we can only imagine what he's been through. But I don't necessarily think that the movie's any richer for not showing you more.
My take kind of on the flashbacks is that all put you in the mindset of Joaquin Phoenix's character in the present. So it's what he's thinking about at those times is kind of how I felt about it. So that's why we're not necessarily getting a ton of information on some of them, because he's just thinking about these little snippets or these little parts of it. That was my take on it, that it was more his memories and his flashes in the present and just whatever he was thinking. And they didn't expound upon it because that's what he was thinking about at the time.
Yeah, I can totally see that too. That sounds satisfactory to me. I don't know that I got that initially with my own viewing, but talking about it, I can totally see it, and it totally works. You know, it feels right.
I think I agree that the movie isn't richer for having shown us less flashbacks and letting us like piece it together. I think I just think that what she did show us was exactly what we needed to see, no more, no less. Maybe there could have been more that would have enhanced it or let us know a little bit more detail. But I think, like, for me, I kind of just got like, he came from a troubled home where like there was some sort of like domestic violence that also messed him up, you know, and I don't know how much more I needed to know than that.
So let me ask you this. So in the same way that she doesn't show you the violence that happens, and she doesn't let you have that satisfaction of seeing, you know, the bad guy get killed, is in some way this the same, where so we just don't have the satisfaction of knowing exactly why he carries a hammer around. You know, we just see it in the flashbacks. Is it the same as the violence, you know, the withholding?
I might agree. I appreciate what she's doing because I don't want this to be reduced to another film like Taken, right? I appreciate everything she's trying to do, but I don't know that I'm convinced that it's more effective to not show the violence than it is to show the immediate aftermath of the violence. Is that what you were asking?
Well, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but I think you're saying that like withholding information from the flashback and not filling in the story and giving us those moments of like, oh, so that's what happened. Like, that's why he's this way, and giving us that like super concrete information. Is that similar to the way that she's not showing us the violence so that it doesn't succumb to
in the way that
the usual?
Yeah, in the way that you said that we're not getting our dopamine hit from the violence, like, yeah, go get him, Joaquin Phoenix. In the same way that it's not clicking, we don't get the whole story, so it doesn't click into place. Oh, his dad used the hammer to beat his mom one time, or, you know, something along those lines. So
you don't get the dopamine from like the sad perspective of the story either.
Or like the clicking together of the story, you know, like why does he carry the hammer? Like,
right. You don't get the part that feels like it should click into place because this is the type of movie we're watching.
Yeah. So that's kind of what I mean with the flashbacks.
Right.
You know, it's just kind of a withholding movie in general. It's not giving us everything.
Right. And while I appreciate that because it's unique and it's not normal, does that necessarily make for a better movie? Is a director coming in with the intention of intentionally withholding what you want? Is that necessarily make for a better artistic experience by giving you what you don't want versus giving you what you think you want?
That's probably up to the beholder, you know.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, yeah, I don't expect like an answer one size fits all. It's more just like, what do you guys think?
I think it can certainly be effective, and I think this movie does it successfully. So I think that for the most part, this is a better movie for doing those things than it would be otherwise.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think I agree with that, yeah.
The flashbacks, you know, you said you didn't think about anything afterwards, and But that's the flashbacks is what I thought about afterwards. Like I walked away from the movie, and the person I saw it with, we talked about it. And so the flashbacks is what I thought, like what led up to that. And then, so I enjoy the flashback, I think, a little bit more than both of you. So,
yeah, let me ask you guys this too. Did any of you guys actively think of Taxi Driver while you were watching this? Because I did a lot.
I didn't think of Taxi Driver, but I did think of Drive.
I thought of Drive. I thought of Taken. I thought of Taxi Driver. I thought of a lot of movies during this. The script is so bare bones and so simple that I don't understand how you could not think of something like Drive.
I wonder if this has more talking than The Quiet Place.
Yeah, it felt like a somehow more indie Drive, like more like non-mainstream.
That's interesting because Drive is pretty non-mainstream.
No, I 100% agree with that. Well, yeah, Drive was not mainstream, but it was also pretty crowd-pleasing.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just kind of took what Drive was doing and like to use a common meme, it said, "Hold my beer, Drive."
Yeah, maybe that's the stuff. So if they hadn't cut those 20 pages, maybe it would have been closer to Drive than it is now.
Yeah. And then I think Taxi Driver, you have like the obvious thing where he's going to rescue a girl who's in like a prostitution thing and who's underage. But the time that I actually thought about it the most was whenever he was like posted up outside of like the senator's like station, and you had like the signs that says like so and so for senator or governor or whatever, which like that just directly reminded me of De Niro like posted up outside the political firm where Sybil Shepherd works in Taxi Driver.
Yeah, definitely. I think Lynne Ramsay was probably thinking of Taxi Driver quite a bit. She's a big movie nerd. Listening to her interviews in those podcasts I mentioned earlier, she references a lot of movies she likes.
So do you guys want to talk about the ending?
No.
All right,
yes.
Well, then that's it.
Yes, I do want to talk about the ending.
Yeah, I think like Taxi Driver, this one has kind of a sort of ambiguous ending or ending that you can draw things from.
It's setting up for the sequel.
Well, yeah, obviously. But
it's called You Were Really There.
Yeah, and "were" is underlined in all caps. You were really there.
You only thought you weren't.
So I guess the ending being after he's rescued her the second time and they're sitting in the diner. That's what I'm thinking of as the ending. Mm-hmm. What did you guys think of that scene? Because I felt I really enjoyed that scene. Like that scene like could have gone on longer. Like I just thought there's something about the vibe of it, of them just sitting down and eating at a diner. It was also like the brightest scene in the movie, so it was like kind of like pleasantly bright in compared to the rest of it.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. I'm not exactly sure what it means, because I think the scene in the part that you're talking about is, he shoots himself at the very end, and then it turns out that it was just a fantasy and he's asleep.
Right, but then she comes back and she says something like, "Are you ready? Like, it's a beautiful day."
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Yeah, it is a beautiful day.
Don't let it get away," is what he says after that.
Yeah, so I think that's significant.
Did you guys think he had shot himself at the beginning, like when it first happened?
I did for like a split second until no one was reacting, and then I was like, okay.
I don't know if there was a statement going on with that scene, but I did start to think that maybe we were about to get like a message when the ambient noise of the restaurant, like the other people talking, started to ramp up after the girl left and went to the restroom, because we started hearing people talk, and they were talking about like their diets and exercising and like all of this stuff that to me seems super mundane in comparison to what we've just witnessed, like a girl in a sex slavery prostitution sort of ring, and all the people that have died in this big like government conspiracy. Joaquin Pheonix is probably like going to be wanted for killing a cop, and probably end up in jail, and they're probably going to end up being dead or like they're on the run for like the rest of their life. But like you have all of that, but then like you get this noise ramp up of like people talking about like, "Oh, you can't eat that. You can't have any sugar," like it says like people talking about like things that seem like super irrelevant and silly in comparison.
Well, and she comes out and she says to him like, "Isn't it a beautiful day?" But I guess they have every reason to not think it's a beautiful day because both of their lives are essentially over as we know them, you know? They're going to be on the run forever. But here they are admiring the beautiful circumstances they find themselves in. So,
actually, my take is, I mean, if I continue this movie along in my head, my take is because it was a government conspiracy and the way that the governor was killed, and they were all dirty, that like the cops, it just gets brushed under the rug, and Joaquin Pheonix and the girl are free to go because nobody wants to go down that rabbit hole and bring them out,
Well,
I guess that's possible.
Yeah, that's totally possible. I hope that's the case. I hope they get to Mexico and he finds some happiness. Before we move too far, I wanted to kind of address one thing real quick, which is that I really enjoyed the relationship between Joaquin Phoenix and his mother. And I think that does a lot to humanize him and keeps him from being the typical hero, right? Like usually in these movies, the Liam Neeson character has a wife or a daughter he's got to save, and that's all we really need to know about him. We don't need to know what he likes, what he prefers, what he thinks about. Whereas this character, we see him hanging out with his mom. He doesn't have a daughter. He doesn't have a wife. That's just like a canned, easy plot device to try to motivate him. I mean, the mom, I guess, is that, whenever she dies, she motivates him. But the way he handles it and the non-masculine way he plays it, with like the joking with like the psycho noise, like the wah, 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 with like the knife,
Yeah.
Yeah, so whenever he goes over that silly noise with his mom and takes care of her whenever she's forgetful and overflows the bathroom water faucet, I find all of that to ground the movie more than any amount of flashbacks could have done.
Yeah, I think what grounds that and keeps that from falling into the arena where like it feels like a plot device is that he's not totally like perfect with her, like he does make that stabbing noise again, like when she's in the bathroom, and like you can see his frustration with her and like the situation, and like
right.
I think that is a little bit more than like he's like perfectly saintly with her, I think that does more to ground that and keep it feeling like, okay, this is his mother character that now we're gonna like him, you know what I mean?
And the flashbacks kind of call back to the mother and maybe explain a little bit why he's with her still. Like maybe they have a shared trauma as well. They don't necessarily explain it, but I would venture forth to say that that's probably one of the reasons.
Well, and you get an idea that they're pretty close because when he comes home and she talks about how earlier she was watching Psycho and, she should have waited for him, but she didn't. You get the idea that these are two people that, they watch movies together. Mm-hmm. They have a rapport. They have a back and forth. He's actually close with his mom.
Yeah, which I thought was really good.
Did you notice the movie that was playing on the TV right before the Psycho joke?
Oh, yeah. That was a movie we reviewed not too long ago called Samuel Fuller's The Naked Kiss.
Oh.
Yeah, it was the intro.
I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it's the intro where a
she's giving the money back.
Constance Towers is fighting her John.
How did I not see that?
I don't know. That's the first, I heard the audio when that scene started, and I was like, hey, I saw that movie not too long ago.
Well, that's cool. That's fun.
She must be watching TCM or something like that.
It's a cool thing to do. Makes his mom even more likable, in my opinion. Any other thoughts? Any other final things you guys have to say about the movie?
No, go watch it. Go see it in the theater. Support this movie. Yeah, I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, I really liked it. I think it is very pulpy subject matter that you think you might have seen a million times, but I don't think you've ever quite seen it done this way. It focuses on character more than it focuses on action and killing. And I think it's a stronger movie for it. I think Lynne Ramsay, I'm definitely going to be interested in what she does next. Hopefully it doesn't take her like another 6 years or 7 years to make another movie.
Yeah, hopefully not. But if that's what it takes to make a movie as good as this one, I'll wait.
Certainly. I want to watch Ratcatcher a lot now.
Yeah, me too. I've never seen it. Always wanted to.
You guys should definitely see We Need to Talk About Kevin as well. Tilda Swinton is so good in that movie.
Yeah, I want to now more than I ever did.
Yeah, so is John C. Reilly. So See that movie and let me know what you guys think, because I think I prefer it more than You Were Never Really Here. But as we discuss You Were Never Really Here, it is growing in my appreciation for it. All right, so before we move into our question, I wanted to read a listener question from @WSAMPod, which is War Starts at Midnight. They asked us, what would be our weapon of choice? So, like, instead of a hammer, what would you use to go save a little girl from captivity?
I think my weapon of choice would be Christopher Walken.
That was so bad, but awesome at the same time.
I
If
don't
anyone
get it.
doesn't get that, you don't get that?
No, I do get it. It's a music video.
Yeah, all right.
For anyone who doesn't get it, it's a music video. Chris is old.
That starred Christopher Walken. Yeah.
Called weapon of choice.
All right, Justin, what about what would you be? I can't even talk. What would be your weapon of choice?
Man, maybe it's just I've been on film sets a lot and in film school, but I always think about how much it would hurt to hit somebody with like the arm from a C-stand, like swing it like a bat,
Yeah.
you know?
Just
like
a metal blunt object. For those of you who don't know what a C-stand is,
yeah.
on a film set or I guess a set of any kind where they're filming, you have these things called C-stands that are metal stands designed to hold things.
Yeah, they can do everything. They're amazing. They're the best invention ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they have a little detachable arm that's just basically a rod that's probably like 3 feet long, and on the end is a metal knuckle that you can put something into and tighten down, and it'll hold it and clamp it down in place. But I just want to take that arm off and beat people with it, not in the real life, but in the hypothetical situation where I wanted to hurt somebody.
Right. Exactly.
All right, so what about you, Mike?
I would say if I were going to some place with the intention of hurting someone to free someone, I would want to enjoy myself. I'd bring a blowtorch. Maybe.
Ouch.
Yeah, maybe.
It'd be hard to kill somebody with. It'd take a long time.
Yeah, but that's okay.
Okay. Would you like punch him first and knock him out?
Nah, man. Blowtorch. Just be creative.
All right.
How do you take him? So you just use the blowtorch to take him down?
Well, I figured if you touch them at any place with the blowtorch initially, they're going to hurt real bad. And then once they're like recovering from the initial hurt, you could just, blowtorch them more.
The old blowtorch.
I don't know. It seems,
okay, fair enough.
It seems,
it's
it
your
seems
choice.
more effective than a hammer.
Oh, yeah, that's
And
true.
Christopher Walken.
It's way more effective than Christopher Walken.
Beg to differ. Yeah, that guy is a pretty good dancer. He'll just charm them, and then they'll be on my side. So,
Or I guess we could just use a gun, but that wouldn't be very fun.
Yeah, no, gun's the worst option. It's worse than a blowtorch. Honestly, normally we do a question, but I think that question was good enough for
I
our
think
final
that's our
question.
We should have had that as a
Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. War Starts at Midnight.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see you at midnight for the war.
I'm gonna see 11:55. I'm gonna get the jump on him.
Get early.
Yeah,
Smart.
yeah,
Smart.
yeah.
Smart.
All right, so I guess that does it for this show.
All right.
Yeah, thank you for listening. Thanks as always to Jake Wagner Russell for doing our intro and outro music. If you want to hear more of his music, you can do so at soundcloud.com/popscotch.
All right. And join us next week. We'll be reviewing The Avengers Infinity War, directed by the Russo brothers.
Yeah, and if you want to ask us questions about Infinity War, want to give us topics about the movie that you want us to discuss, or follow along with what we're watching next, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at casualcinecast. You can join our Facebook group and talk film with us at facebook.com/groups/casualcinecast, or you can email us directly at casualcinemedia@gmail.com.
Thanks so much for listening, guys. We always appreciate it. And until next time, I'll see you later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Get out of here. Stop hanging around. Go away. Peace. We got other things to do.